This is CricketSong with Lunar Wisdom, and this video is going to be discussing or answering the question, how do you bring magic into your children's life? So I had a viewer subscriber, specifically a patron, ask me to talk about working magic with children. And this individual specifically has children. Now, because and this person has younger children. So my children are older now. My daughter is 15 and my son is 19, turning 20 in November. So I'm going to talk about how I approached magic with my children when they were younger. When I self-dedicated or was initiated by God herself as a witch, as Wiccan, within my Wiccan tradition, it was in December of 2005. And at that time, my daughter was 3 and my son was 8. So I've been practicing Wicca specifically since 2005. So in the beginning, when my daughter was 3, it was really, she was really too young to specifically do any sort of training with her. But with my son, and as my daughter grew older, when she started kindergarten, I started with the concept of deity. What was deity? What was the nature of deity? How did we interact with the god and the goddess, or the Lord and Lady? So we spent time outside. At that time I was walking the children back and forth to school. And if it wasn't me, it was when my now husband, then my boyfriend / fiance, would walk the children back and forth to school. We would talk about, when people talked about God, we would talk about goddess and God. So there was always the counterpart. So we would talk about gods manifested within nature, talking about the god and the goddess always being around, talking about our ability to make things happen in our lives, and claiming personal responsibility for the things that occur. Because a lot of people, I feel, especially if they're Christian, they look at the outside as being responsible for what's happening to them within them. So if something good happens, it's a blessing from God. If something bad happens, it's because you gave in to the influence of the devil, or you made God unhappy, or you disobeyed God. It's always whatever was happening within them was because of this outside influence or this outside power. And you really, I felt, looking at that, didn't have a lot of personal empowerment over these things. So I wanted to raise the children with an understanding that yes, there's something bigger than just you. There is forces outside of you that you can work in alignment with, that you can resonate with, that you can shift to, and use that power, those influences, to make choices to create the life that you wanted. So that's how I adopted that. I started with what was the nature of deity, and then we would talk about I would show them how to make changes. Now, I didn't necessarily practice ritualistic spellcrafting with my children. They were always welcome to join my rituals when I was a solitary practitioner. But once the coven was birthed, they were not allowed to participate in coven rituals. However, the coven wasn't birthed until 2011. So from 2005 to 2011, there was 6 years of me practicing rituals, doing rituals, and including them in it if they wanted. I never forced them to participate in any ritual. because I felt like I didn't want to force them. It was done to me as a child, and I didn't like it. And it created more of a rebellious nature than something that I wanted to be a part of. So sometimes my daughter and sometimes my son would participate. The big rituals that we did, like Samhain and Yule and Mabon and Ostara, they were part of that only because at the time when they were younger, they were in traditional school, in the public school system, and they wanted, you know, they talked about Christmas and they wanted to be a part of Christmas. So I wanted to show them that there were spiritual aspects to these things. So we would do Yule, and they would be part of the Yule ritual. But during those rituals, there wasn't really magic. I didn't really do spell casting during those times. So they were part of the celebrations, the seasonal celebrations, and they would turn the wheel of the year that I have hanging on the wall so that they were aware of the changing of the seasons, not also, you know, through the wheel turning, through the calendar, as well as actually experiencing it outside. Now, when it came to specific spell casting, the one spell that really hung on, at least for my daughter, is her nighttime spell. The spell that she does before she goes to sleep. Now, this came up because my daughter is a very sensitive individual. She is naturally more connected to the other realm than my son. My son is very connected to the physical realm through people. He connects to the spiritual realm. What I mean by that is, my son is an empath. He is definitely an empath. He has been an empath for his entire life. There are different signs that I see as he grew up to identify him as an empath. I could do another video at another time about that, but I don't want to go into that now. My daughter has specific signs where I am very aware that she is connected to the Fey realm, and through the Fey realm is connected to the spiritual realm. It's just like a natural thing for her. It's a talent or an ability that we're all born with, but it's more profound for her. And through that, she experienced, especially when she was younger, spiritual entities, ghosts coming to her at night, especially, and I feel it happens at night because you're more open, and she would be afraid. As much as I would encourage her to communicate with these spirits or tell them to go away, she was just afraid of the experience. And because of that, I weaved a spell for her to do at night. It's a very simple visualization. It's a manipulation of her energies, and I wrote a spell for her to say, and she still says it each night that she goes to bed. So that was a spell that was a practical spell, and I find that when dealing with my children, things that were very practical were the things that stuck. She also, I don't know if I still have the video up, but I had a spell that she cast for herself when she was in public schools. There was a young girl who would pick on her and basically bully her, and we did a spell, we cast a spell for the girl to leave her alone. It was a practical spell, and it was a spell that we did more than once. We cast it a few times throughout the month. I think we did it once a week for a full lunar cycle. But the problem with that spell and why I feel like it wasn't working is, as much as my daughter wanted her to leave her alone, she also wanted to be her friend. So I feel like, you know, we would cast the spell, it would work for like a 24, 48 hour period, and then my daughter would want to be the girl's friend, so she would initiate a connection with her again, and then it wouldn't work anymore. So, but the things that were practical, the spell craftings that was practical, were the things that I usually worked with them. We would do simple things like go to the beach and you know, write things in the sand and let the water take it out to sea. Their birthdays is also a time of spell crafting, because we didn't necessarily celebrate Christmas. We did Yule, and Yule was a focus on the sun returning. We only gave one token gift to each other, but it was their birthdays, and still is, birthdays that are the big celebrations. The birthdays are the celebrations where I would spend what people normally spend on at Christmas on their birthdays. So prior to practicing the Wheel of the Year or celebrating the Wheel of the Year, through those 8 sabbats, when we did Christmas, say my Christmas budget was $100 per child before, now it's that $100 per child on their birthday, which is practically better on the budget for me, and focuses them. It's their special day. They get lots of gifts because we celebrate the day that they were manifested, that they chose to have this life experience, that they chose me as their mother and their dad as their dad, and we celebrate that. And we have cake, and we put candles on the cake, and that birthday wish is candle magic. So we create it as such. You know, we're going to do your spell. Make sure you have your wish figured out so that we can send forth your intention. Now, whether the children actually embrace it as actually spell crafting, I'm not sure. My daughter, I feel like, is more focused on the gathering and the party with the friends than the actual spells. I mean, both children will identify themselves as, my daughter says she's a witch, my son says he's Wiccan. So I don't know if I mean, they don't ask much about spellcrafting at this point in their life. My son does get readings from me, and we do look at insight in that way. We talk about ways how they can send forth an intention. I mean, my son is going to be 20, so his view, and he's looking to create a life for himself and get what he wants for himself. And I feel like he does do spell crafting, but not in a ritualistic sense. My daughter, not really. So, I mean, when they were younger, like I said, things that were practical, the birthday, the big one, you know, the birthday magic in that way. Cooking, when they help me cooking, we talk about the herbs, so we do a lot of kitchen magic, you know. Oh, my daughter does a lot of crystals too. But again, I don't look at them necessarily when she works with crystals as spells, but she has specific crystals that she uses for her healing when she's not feeling well. She will take a crystal and she will imbue it with intention, and she will put it under her pillow for when she goes to bed. She has a little pouch of little stones that she'll carry with her. I have those worry dolls that I used to sell online, that we would use the little worry dolls, where you give each of the little dolls a worry that you have. You put them in the little pouch, you tie it, and you put it under your bed. I mean, you actually whisper the worry to the doll. I believe that's a form of magic, puppet magic, sympathetic magic. So we do that, and we used to do that when she was younger too. So, I mean, these are the things I guess I would suggest is when you're dealing with younger children, making the spells, or if you want to, you know, introduce spell crafting with your children, is to do it in a way that's very practical for them, that it's a hands-on, that they can understand. Like I said, I didn't do a lot of ritualistic spell crafting with them because, number one, they didn't want to sit and focus. They are aware of the elements. They are aware of how the elements affect us. For a while, I was incorporating in my homeschooling curriculum with my daughter correspondences with the elements, and we were trying to work in lessons, Wicca lessons, within that, and she was doing really well. You know, we would go throughout the day and say, oh, what's that correspondence? What's that correspondence? But she kind of has sort of moved away from that in a sense. She's not really interested. It's not an interest for her at this point. And again, I never really force my children to be part of magic or witchcraft or Wicca. I allow them to sort of lead the way. But if they come to me at this point with things, I do ask them. So hopefully this gave you some ideas. If you have specific questions in regards to children and magic or children and spellcasting, please feel free to put the questions in the comment section. If I have more questions, I may make another video if people are interested, or you can send me an email or a message if it's of a more personal nature. Hopefully I answered the questions in regards to this to your liking, or gives you something to start with. Until next week, I love you. Mwah.